And we are live on YouTube. Welcome, everyone. I'm just loading my Instagram. Welcome, everyone. As always, I'm going to wait a couple of seconds for anyone who's going to join us. Instagram is loading. Go live. Okay, and we are live on Instagram as well. Now I can purely concentrate on introducing the retreat, introducing my today's guest, and introducing myself. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to How to Be a Psychic Medium, a free international virtual retreat for spiritual seekers. I'm Marta, also known as Marta the Medium, and I'm so honored to be your host on this journey of awakening, connection, and spirit led truth. And this retreat is lovingly sponsored by my signature 10-week Psychic Mediumship Foundation course. And I'm mentioning about it because we are starting the next round in the next couple of weeks. This is a transformative container for intuitives, sensitives, and aspiring mediums who want to connect deeply with spirit, strengthen their gifts, and walk this path with confidence, grounding, and joy. So, if you'd like, or you've been thinking to develop your foundational skills of psychic and mediumship work, strengthen your connection with spirit, spirit guides, your loved ones on the other side, angels, gain confidence in receiving and interpreting messages, check the link in my bio and you can find out more about that course. And if you're already registered and part of this beautiful retreat, then inside the platform you can find out more about this course and you can read beautiful testimonials of students who took this course before. And if you're watching this video on a replay or in the future, feel free to DM me and I'm going to mention to you when the next cohort of this course starts. But let's now move to the key aspect of today's live session. I am incredibly excited now to introduce our special guest. I'm going to bring her to the stage and I'm going to do the official introduction. Welcome, Madame Pamita. Hello.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
I am so happy for you to be part of this retreat, for you to co-create this amazing event. I'm going to introduce you right now. Madame Pamita is a Ukrainian-American witch, teacher, author, candle maker, spellcaster, and tarot reader. She's the author of The Witch's Guide to Animal Familiars, Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft, the Book of Candle Magic, Magical Tarot, the Familiar Magic Pocket Oracle, that's going to come, I think, this year, but I'm going to inquire about that. The Witch's Guide to Plant Familiars and the co-author of Cancer Witch. She's also the proprietress of the online spiritual apothecary, the Parlour of Wonders, and lives in Santa Monica, California. You can find her online at parlourofwonders.com. Again, Madame Pamita, welcome. I am so happy you're here.
No, this is wonderful. I've been looking forward to this very much.
And this is going to be completely unscripted, spirit-led conversation. This is our conversation. And just before we went live, we had a brief conversation and I asked Madame Pamita whether she would be up to pulling some cards for us. And she said yes. So I was hoping we could start that conversation with that, if it's okay with you.
Yes, absolutely. So the deck that I'm using, because everyone always wants to know, readers want to know, and deck collectors want to know. The deck I'm going to be using today is the Silver Acorn Tarot by Stephanie Buscema, who's an amazing artist, amazing, and she is a medium as well. And I wrote the guidebook for it. So it was a little bit of a collaboration. She designed it. It was all her vision, but I was able to write the words to translate what the cards meant. So I thought I'd pull a card or two for the collective and we'll see what energy, if you're watching, this message is for you and this energy that you can work with. So let's see what we've got today on this beautiful Saturday. Oh, lovely. Ah, sweet, sweet. It makes sense. I pulled two cards and they make sense. Absolutely makes sense. I pulled the Page of Wands and I pulled the Queen of Cups. Page of Wands energy is about venturing out into new territory with really big openness. The page is the beginner, starting something new and starting it with passion. Wands represent that element of fire. So this is like perfect for you if you're watching this. It's like it's asking you or encouraging you to step out into the unknown a little, to venture out and to take that first step on your journey. Second card is the Queen of Cups. Queen of Cups energy is deeply intuitive, deeply magical, very empathic, very sensitive, and very open to receiving messages. So it really, to me, is talking about all of this venture, whether you're watching here in the retreat, in the virtual retreat, or you're planning on taking Marta's class. I mean, this is a fantastic message for people entering into that mediumship work for sure. So it's really an encouraging message to step out of your comfort zone, be willing to be the beginner. You know, that's one of the things I think, you know, everybody wants. Oh, I'm sorry, I have two kittens. They just knocked up first plastic. It's fine. They didn't break anything. But you know, when I think about like that energy of the beginner, everyone wants to be an expert. Everyone wants to be, you know, the authority and the expert. But there's something so beautiful about being the beginner, not being ashamed of being a beginner, because the beginner is open. The beginner is like wide-eyed and everything is new and exciting. And so when we can embrace being a beginner, it really, I think it accelerates our learning. You have to be a beginner, as you know very well, to be an empath. You have to be in that beginner state and remind yourself of that beginner state, even if you're very, very experienced. So I think it's a lovely reading for the collective.
Absolutely beautiful. And what has just popped into my mind, Spirit, is using the analogy. It is something probably similar. As adults, we disconnect ourselves from our inner child. And it's so important to have so much fun and joy while developing. And I truly believe we never stop developing and learning. So treat it as an ongoing journey and have so much fun, and treat that work with like reverence. But I think that component of magic is so crucial. So thank you so much for pulling those cards and for those beautiful messages. And since I've mentioned about the word magic, I always love to begin these conversations by getting to know the person behind the magic. And for those watching who might be newer to your work, could you share a little bit about your journey? What drew you to the spiritual path, and what were maybe some of your pivotal moments or awakenings that led you where you are right now?
Well, I was very fortunate growing up in a household where spirituality and magic and the world of spirits really was very accepted. My, I grew up in my mother and my parents, but really my mother was religious. She was Catholic, but she was very open to tarot, Ouija board, talking spirit boards and astrology and all of these things. She herself wasn't terribly interested in it, but she allowed me. My mother did do some fun things with me. Like we would practice ESP and reading each other's minds. We did do things like that. So she was very open spiritually. And I really credit this as the fact that she was Ukrainian. Slavic people can blend that traditional religion with spiritualism, and they don't really have a problem with it. So I feel like rather than the things that we see, at least in the US right now, where this is evil and bad and wrong, that wasn't exist in my household and in my world. So I was very open. I got my first tarot deck. My mother bought me my first tarot deck when I was 10 years old. I mean, so this was a very open household. And then, as I began as a young woman, I was not even a young woman, a child, in 12, 13, 14 years old, I was reading every book I could get my hands on at the library about spirits and ghosts and all the metaphysical things I could find. And then I started finding books on witchcraft, Sybil Leek's book, Diary of a Witch. And I knew that this path of really the folk witch, or the nature centric witch, was really the path that I keep coming back to. I explore things and then I come back. And so it's been a very twisty, turny path. In the meantime, I've written lots of books, as you mentioned in my intro. My latest book is here, and a book of Witch's Guide to Animal Familiars, which is all about working with animals in your practice. I have a book that I'm working on now about working psychically with plants and working with the natural world around us. So that's really the center of my my practice, for sure.
Thank you. I have already 2 questions. I'm trying to limit myself, but your connection to your Ukrainian roots is something that feels so vibrant in your work. And I feel it's so important because I've seen and met so many friends of mine, and also I've had many students who used to be ashamed of their roots, who used to be ashamed of their heritage. So I'm curious, have you always felt called to your ancestral lineage and Slavic magical tradition? And what would you tell to those people who are not maybe fully embracing their heritage?
Well, I think, you bring up something that I haven't even really shared with anyone before, which is that my Ukrainian heritage at points in my life felt very painful and disconnected. Not because I was necessarily ashamed, but more because nobody, up until really, I mean, if we think about it, up until this full-scale invasion by Russia, people didn't even know where Ukraine was or anything about it. And so I feel like I had no one to share it with. Right? That's my feeling, is that I didn't have anyone to share it with. But the other part of it is we have like world situations. So for Ukrainians to find anything out about our heritage, which really has been wiped out by Soviet times and subsumed for hundreds of years by Russia, saying you don't have your own identity. You are like saying you are Russian, which isn't true, right? So it felt very, I had a lot of confusion, no information. You couldn't find any information. And then also felt this disconnect from it, and it felt painful to me. But then I met another Ukrainian witch who's Canadian-Ukrainian. Ukrainian-Canadian. And when she and I met, it helped me because I had someone to talk to about it, right? So even though my mom would tell me stories about what my grandmother would do, which she was a healer, she was practicing Vilivadi Visk, which is wax pouring into water for healing. She made motanki, which are dolls that are magical spirit dolls that you would hold, that are home for your ancestor spirits. And we would make pesanki, which are the decorated magical talismanic eggs, things like that. We had these practices, but I didn't have an anchor for it. So I think that when you come from this disconnect, it can feel very painful. And so maybe a lot of times people are not, maybe they feel ashamed, or maybe they feel something else, but they may feel that they don't have a line to it, or they don't have a way to connect to it. So I started, when I found my friend, Katie, she and I would share information all the time. And she had this wonderful book that connected me to the practice that my grandmother did, which was Vilivadi Visk. And when I found out there was documentation about that, then it really was like opening, like in Aladdin, opening the Cave of Wonders. I felt like, oh, if I can find that, I can find more information. And that is really what inspired Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft, and really inspired me to dive in very deeply to my magical practice. Then I would say, it's not only just me that's rediscovering this, it's people in Ukraine, not only the diaspora Ukrainians who are not
Mhm.
at their home like me, but ones who are there are also rediscovering the same things I'm rediscovering because of this destruction of culture that happened for 180 years, or really more than that, the destruction of the Ukrainian culture. So that's kind of how it has been for me. And I really haven't talked about the pain of that to anyone. You're the first person I'm
Mm.
talking to about it.
Yeah. Now, thank you so much for sharing. I think it's so important, and the fact that you're so well authentic and vulnerable with with your audience, and then like with the community here, it means a lot because we don't need more like molded, fake people, especially in the spirituality. So, like, thank you so much for being so raw and honest. I just got goosebumps. I am also so deeply moved by how you own and embrace the title witch. And I'm curious to know, was there a time when you truly claimed it, when you said out loud, I'm a witch? And how did it feel to step into that identity, especially in a world that hasn't always honored that word? And what does a witch means to you? Who is a witch?
Well, I mean, I remember when I was young, maybe about 10 or 11 years old, reading uh, if witches witches turn around 3 times under the full moon and bow to the moon, and that's how you become a witch. And so I used to do that as a
Mm,
young
okay.
little child. So I don't, but I really didn't have like that path that was like a straight path, because, and again, I think a lot of it was back in, I think everyone now has to remember, or if they're young, imagine what it was like when there was no internet. You didn't
Mm,
have ways of connecting to communities. You didn't have, how do you find somebody to teach you? How do you find the books if they're not at the library and you're a child, you're a kid, and you don't have money to go to a bookstore, and there weren't that many bookstores that would have any information about this. So the rarity of it back then was made it very special when you would find something, or you would find a person. But for me, my path, it kept calling to me. Witchcraft kept calling to me, and the more I searched, then the more I would find. And so while I was being called as a young girl, as this young girl being called to it, I didn't start on that path and continue going on that path. I couldn't find anything, and so what do? You just abandon it. If you can't find anything, you don't have any information. So it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I was able to find women that were practicing witchcraft in big groups, actually, here in Los Angeles, and then
mm,
started practicing with them. And that's when that began for me, really, in earnest. So I think there was this childhood and teens where I was dabbling with things that were adjacent because that was the closest thing I could find. So I was doing tarot, of course. I was doing tarot, and I was, looking at astrology and learning what I could where I could. But I think really it was in my 20s that I began to say, yes, I'm a witch. And I felt like a witch rather than I felt like a seeker.
mm, mhm,
Yeah.
mm.
So,
Some of the people who are watching, this live or are part of this retreat might be completely new to witchcraft. Would you be able to mention what is witchcraft and what are your favorite practices or anything that you would recommend to the beginners?
yes. So, well, there's lots of different witches and there's lots of different practices. The idea that witchcraft is associated with the devil or Satan was the invention of
Mm.
a guy in the 1400s who was a kind of a weird perv. to be honest. He wanted to put women on trial and ask them about their sex life publicly. That's what he wanted to do. So this was an invention, really. But if what we look at and what I practice is really folk magic. And folk magic is looking back at people who honored the spirits of the land, worked with the spirits of nature, and connected deeply with great love and reverence for that life force that exists in nature. So I would describe myself as a folk magic witch. I'm a spiritualist. I work with spirits. I am an animist, which is the oldest spiritual practice, an ancient prehistoric spiritual practice of seeing spirit in every living thing around us, and even every natural thing around us, the rocks, the clouds, these all have life force. So that's how I would describe myself. Some people call this hedge witch, because hedge witch is like a shamanic witch. So I practice I have lots of shamanic practices in my practice. And it's really not got anything to do with Christianity and the devil and all of that stuff, So that doesn't say there aren't people that practice that, but that's not my path. And we have witches of all kinds, so I can only really speak to my practice. But that's how I identify as a witch. It's really, and I think for me, a witch, calling myself a witch is a very empowering thing, because it opens the door for other people to call themselves a witch if they feel that is their path. But I also feel like it's a very feminist thing. I'm a feminist, and I feel like it's a very feminist thing. Men, of course, can be witches as well, but it starts with the mother, starts with the female, and really that's the center of the practice. So you have to be, if you identify as male, you have to be very in touch with your feminine side to really embrace this practice, I think. So, yeah.
I absolutely love it. And I love being called a witch. I know so many people try to use that term in a very derogatory way to really offend me. But I always tap into the sense of empowerment. And I even had that conversation throughout the years with my friend. Her husband would always distinguish, there are two Martas. She's got two friends. So one is the witch. Which one? The witch. And I'm like, this is actually very empowering. Tell your husband that I'm so grateful. And of course, he makes joke about it, but I actually love it. And I actually can feel the sense of pride.
Yeah.
So I try to educate people around me that you can find your own interpretation of what being a witch means to you, and you can fully embody it. And yes, always use your discernment. You always have a choice what type of witch or what type of human being you are going to be. So thank you.
One of the things I think about it, there's a little meme saying that's been around for decades now, that a witch is a woman in total control of herself. WITCH, woman in total control of herself. And I feel like that embodies actually great wisdom, because of all the spiritual paths, for me, the witch path has no leader. You have no leader, no holy book, and truly you might have a path that has rules to it, but you don't have to follow a path that has rules. I always say there's no pope of witchcraft, right? So no one can tell you what is right for your path. You get to create it yourself. So whether it is you're, diving into working in nature, or you're working in divination and tarot and, runes or whatever, you are working this path as your own, and your ethics are your own. So you can decide for yourself, not somebody on high telling you this is right and this is wrong. So that to me is so essential.
It feels so empowering. Yes, we might convert many people watching here to tap into their true identity. But of course, we all have free will, and we can choose for ourselves. I would love to shift into talking about your newest book, the one that you showed us kindly, The Witch's Guide to Animal Familiars. The title itself feels like a spell. What inspired you to write this particular book?
Well, I have this great love of animals and connecting to animals I just find them, oh gosh, I just feel like it's a doorway into other worlds when we work with animals. If you have a pet or even a wild animal, like it doesn't, like some people are like, well, I don't have a familiar because my apartment won't allow pets. I said, that is not a limitation whatsoever, because there's a wide world out there with animals in the wild that you can begin to work. And when we start opening up to connecting to the animals around us, whether they're pets, whether they're wild animals, we start to, I feel like it opens up a deep intuitive connection. We get a different view of life. We have great wisdom, so much wisdom that comes from animals, and we can learn so much from them. And we can co-create with them. And this book is all about co-creation with animals, that your animals around you want willingly to lend you their energy. As long as we're not forcing them, they have to want to join us. Just like you invited me to come here and I agreed. I was so excited and looking forward to it. But because it wasn't like you forced me to come here, and I'm not forcing you to come here. We're coming together in absolute free will. And so when we work with animals and we work with them and they come forward and want to lend their energy to us, it opens up such new worlds and such amazing possibilities for our spiritual path, whether you identify as a witch or not. I had many people get this book who aren't witches, but they love it. Oops, sorry. I have many people that love animals, and they work, they're like, but I'm not a witch. I'm like, this is not, yes, you can be, absolutely. This, is designed with spells and magic, but you can look at the essence of these animals and tap into their energy and use it in any way you want to use it, So, yeah.
So many people feel drawn to certain animals but don't know how to make sense of it. And would you be able to mention who are animal familiars and what's the difference between animal familiars and maybe spirit animals, or just so that we can start that conversation?
Yeah. So when we look at like relationships, just in our human relationship, this is a great analogy. Not everyone is your best friend. And it would be crazy if every person you met was your best friend. You don't have enough time in the day to nurture relationships. If you have 100 best friends, you couldn't nurture those relationships. So we have different sort of people that come into our life. We might have a helpful stranger who helps us in some way, and then we never see them again. Right. But then we have this wonderful momentary encounter, and that's it. We might have people that come to us that have a very deep connection, maybe even past life connections, where we instantly know this is an important person. Or we might have friends that we like to do things with, and then friends that we share our secrets with, and so on. So the same thing is true with the animals that we encounter. Not every animal is going to be your familiar. That would be too much for anybody. A familiar really is an animal and a bond that you're creating magic together. So I use the example in my book that at that time that I was writing the book, I had 2 cats. Now I have 3. So, I had 2 cats. One, Glinda, is my familiar, and one, Ozma, was not my familiar. She's passed away now since then. But she was very much a healer. She loved me. She was bonded to me, but she did not show interest in my spiritual practice. She was there on another capacity. Just as we have friends that serve different roles in our life, we can have animals that serve different roles. The difference with her and Glinda is that Glinda is interested in my magic. She comes over and looks at my candle spells and lends her energy to the candle magic that I do. She comes around when I'm doing a reading. She isn't a cuddly cat, but she's very much, we have a very, very close bond on this spiritual level of working and lending energy. And I feel like she's a teacher to me. She inspects my work and I pick up the psychic messages, you need to fix that, or this, so she is like kind of like my mentor in some ways. So, and then I have these 2 new little kittens, and the new little kittens are so young, there's no telling if they'll become, they definitely have their own personalities. One is a cuddler, like extraordinary cuddler. The other one is, he comes around when he wants to, but they're very sweet. And I don't know if they will become familiars or if they're just going to be wonderful animal friends. I don't know. So we'll find out. In the wild, there's animals that come around all the time. I have crows that come around all the time that I have a close relationship with them. I'm now working with honeybees because I have 2 hives, and it's still too new for me to know what their role is in my magical practice, but certainly I can say that they are teaching me and I'm getting downloads from them. So that is also an interesting thing. I'm learning this interesting relationship with this new creature that I've always admired from a distance, but now I have this more intimate relationship with them in the hive. So yeah.
I love it. And would you say that animal familiars show up in our lives at key moments in our life? If you can look at your own life, like have you been particularly close to maybe other animal familiars, the ones that you've mentioned, and whether there's any correlation with the key events, key moments?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that we can call them to us, but they're going to come at our own time, in their own time. So for example, with the honeybees, which are really magical, whether they're familiar or whether they're an animal ally or however they're showing up, or animal friend in my life, regardless, it's a very magical journey. I had a hive that I tried to start probably in 2017 or 2018. And the bees took off, which is kind of typical. This will happen. It's not unusual. You try and keep them, but they don't like the hive and they go somewhere else. So I really wanted to have a beehive, but I didn't really have the know-how or knowledge to do it. And I kept saying, I need somebody to show up that can help me. And I even tried to force it. Like I went to a beekeepers club and tried to get a mentor, but nobody was coming forward. And then synchronicities happen. I was at this place and I met this man who was a beekeeper, and he says, I put hives in people's backyards. I collect the bees and I rehome them in people's yards. And I said, oh, and then I dropped the ball. Like I got his information and then I never contacted him, but the bees clearly wanted to come. My sister, who lives in the same town as I do, had a bee problem, and she contacted me and said, do you know anyone that collects bees? And I said, yes, I know this guy. That brought he brought that hive over. That one didn't stay. They took off, but he brought 2 more hives over. So it was the bees doing more of the work actually than I was to make these synchronicities happen so that they could come into my life, because I wanted to, but then I would always like drop the ball. So, that's a sign when they're coming forward. You know what I mean? Like, so, yeah. So I feel like that, and it has been so wonderful since I've had them. So I feel like those are the kinds of things you really want to look for, that even if you're refusing the call or just being lazy about it, they'll keep insisting and they'll keep coming forward. We see this, time and time again with manifesting, right? You can manifest something, you can kind of wish something, and then all of a sudden it happens, but you have to also step up. And if you don't, it will keep trying to come to you, right? It will come to you if you don't follow through. So yeah, that's how, so that I
Mm.
think is a great example. But yeah, they'll come to you. They can sometimes be insistent in that way, but they'll come to you in their time as well, because it's been a journey of 7-8 years now that I've been
Mm.
to get to this point of the manifestation. So I'm always very patient with magic. Like I put it out there, and then I let the universe do the heavy lifting. I guess I don't.
Mm.
Yeah.
And one question that I've got, since you've kindly shared that story, so do you think it is an animal familiar that chooses us, in terms like, do you truly believe like they chose you, or was it you first that set an intention that you wanted to call in, or did you have to meet in the middle? What is it like? Did they first appear in your life and then you said yes because you have a free will? Or I'm very curious about that aspect. Or can we call any animal familiars to our life?
I think it can go all of those ways. In the case of the bees, I was always very intrigued with bees, but I kind of couldn't figure out how to get them into my life, other than enjoying them, the wild bees around, right? And I think that for me, I don't know if that call, I think it was really, I don't know. I think it was very mutual with me and the bees, for sure. It's been very mutual. Like I've been intrigued with them, but they're insisting we need to work together. So anytime I would see, let's say, for example, magic about bees, even though I didn't have a beehive at that time, I would read avidly about it, or, watch a documentary, because I just found them always so um, very special, very ancient magic with bees. By the way, this goes back to prehistory, our relationship with bees and domesticating bees and the magic of bees and wild bees as well. So I feel like it was very mutual with me and the bees. I don't think, but then also synchronicities happen. Like Glinda, my familiar cat, she came into my life where I wasn't really wanting to have a cat. I wanted one. I've had cats, many cats over my lifetime, but I felt like I was traveling too much. I really didn't have the time for one. And then I had a mouse in my house. So then I said, well, I don't want a mouse in my house, and I don't want to set traps. I'm going to get a cat. And then I went to go get a different cat, and that cat had already been adopted, and Glinda was there. So Glinda was not my first choice. Even seeing her, I was like, But then when I actually held her, and she was so relaxed, and her energy was so grounded. She's Taurus energy all the way, very earthy and grounded. Then I said, oh, she's my cat. So it wasn't until I actually held her, but just looking at her picture, she wasn't the one I picked. But look at the things and the synchronicities. I had to have a mouse. That forced me to look for a cat. And then when I had an eye on a cat, that cat was pulled out of the picture so that I would get Glinda. So I feel like she really, whether it's the universe or her or somebody really creating those synchronicities. So I tend to pay attention to those synchronicities when they show up. And then sometimes afterwards, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's why that happened. And I didn't think in my mind familiar with her. I was thinking, I just want a cat in the house so the mice will go away. That's what I was thinking. So.
And how might someone tell if their cat or dog or any animal is also showing up as a familiar?
Well,
how would they know?
This is one of my little kittens. This is Binks. He just came around. Now he's gone. I think one of the things you can look for many ways. You can obviously do divination. You can use a pendulum and ask, right? Lovely way to get those direct answers. And I feel like those are like the intuition training wheels. Pendulum really helps you if you're not sure if an intuitive message is real or if you're just making it up. Those training wheels that you need as you're beginning, pendulum can really can help with that. So you can use a pendulum, but I also think, or tarot cards or oracle cards or things like that to discover. But I also think you'll notice something that the animal is interested or does something related to your spiritual practice. I interviewed many, many people about many magical practitioners about their familiars, and so many wonderful stories. And things like dogs who would people would be casting a circle and the dog would stand guard while they and stay there the whole time on its own, right? Stay there. Or like for Glinda, she'll come around and inspect my work. I don't know I don't know how to describe it other than she's inspecting my work. And then you'll notice if that is the case. I don't want to say that a familiar or look at it in a hierarchical way, like this is met better than an animal that's a loving pet. It's not that one is better than the other. They just have a different kind of a role in your life. So you could have like my late cat Ozma. She was a lovely cat. I mean, I loved her so much. She was very affectionate, very sweet, very much a healer. Oh my gosh, so much of a healer. But I wouldn't call her a familiar because she wasn't interested in sharing energy regarding magic and manifestation. She just wasn't interested. So that's okay. We had a great relationship that was equally as good. In fact, in some ways better than Glinda. Glinda can be kind of a brat. She's a little bit of a diva, but but I think that's what you want to look for. Is you want to look for the interest coming from the animal to be involved in your spiritual practice. So that means when you're meditating, do they come around when you're meditating? Do they come around if you're pulling tarot cards, or if you're doing, casting a circle? Are they coming and protecting the circle or sitting in the middle of it? Those are things you want to look for. So
thank you. And once we become aware, let's say that our animal is an animal familiar, that they're very curious, that they are definitely overlooking our spiritual practice, what would be one tip that you would give to a practicing psychic medium or any other light worker, how they can work with their animal familiar, how they can use the animal's wisdom and co-create that magic together?
Yeah. Well, it's really looking, I mean, there's so many avenues that an animal can work with us on our spiritual practice. But I think that when you're thinking about the fact that they're lending energy on this topic, whether the topic is meditation or the topic is doing, divination or whatever, they're lending their energy. This is a wonderful thing. I mean, a great analogy for that is like if I have to do a job by myself, but then I ask my friend Marta to come along and we do it together, it's going to be more fun. It's going to be easier. We'll be able to get it done faster and all of those things. So I think we want to think about that animal that is willing to lend us our magic, with their magic and their energy, whether it's a pet or whether it's a wild animal out in the world. You have this opportunity to make things go bigger. And really, one of the things I think of is that animals don't have judgments about intention like people do. So that is their advantage. I mean, this is the advantage of the natural world, is that the natural world is not going to say, oh, your intention for health, you're asking for too much, right? Or that's not, that, or your intention for abundance, oh, you don't deserve it. Or all of the things that our rational mind will come in with, or ego will come in with. An animal does not have that. They're going to come with pure energy, energetic force of, yeah, let's do this. So what a great partner to have when you're manifesting, when you're putting out intention, when you're working on your spiritual path. You get an infusion of this pure positive energy. So good, right?
Thank you. I have to ask you a couple of questions before we finish it. I'll not be able to let you go before I ask about your spell work and candle magic, especially through your beautiful shop, the Parlour of Wonders. Can you tell us more about candle magic, what it is, how it works, and why it is such a powerful tool?
Well, I think that when we bring in support, I have had in the past a podcast called Magic and the Law of Attraction. Law of
Mm-hmm.
attraction works very well up until a point. I think that there can be, this is my opinion, by the way. So someone might have a
Mm-hmm.
different opinion, it's totally okay. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
But the problem is us, right? We get in our
Mm-hmm.
own way. So for example, we might say, "Oh, I want that new job." And we have a very positive intention. I really want that job and a desire. The desire isn't bad. Even the focus isn't bad. But then human nature comes in, our rational mind comes in. Even well meaning people around us might come in and say, "Oh, you're not going to get that job. Don't get your hopes up." Or
Mm.
you might in your heart be like, "I want that job, but what if I don't get it?" Right? It's like we take a step forward and a step back. So when we bring in tools, I think really we bring in nature, right? When we bring nature into the picture, whether it's our animals, whether it's a candle, whether it's an herb, any of these things, we bring these in, they offer pure support. They don't have an
Mm.
opinion about our desire, unlike another
Mm.
person or even our own ego or ourselves. So when we bring in a candle into a spell, I make candles out of beeswax. So there's another connection
Mm.
to bees,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So we're bringing in the energy of the bees. If that candle has a shape, we're bringing in symbolism that is helping
Mm.
support our intention. We can have a color of a candle, which brings in color magic, which supports our intention. We might put
Mm.
some herbs or some oils around that candle. Now we have the energy of the plants that are added to this. So these are all allies that we bring in to keep this intention going forward, even if we ourselves are a bit wobbly, even if we're going one step forward, one back, one forward, one back.
Mhm.
If we are doing that little dance of forward and backwards and we don't have support, we're just probably going to stall on that in that area. But when we bring in the support, we can put the intention, I want that job, I want to have a love in my life, I want to have abundance, or I want to have health, or whatever it is that we're putting forward.
Mhm.
And it keeps the energy going forward, even if we're wobbling, because we have all of this support from the natural world. So that's why when we do spell work, when we bring in tools, especially tools of nature, we're bringing in these powerful forces that will just be like, sure, you want that? Let's go there. Sure, you want that? Let's go there. And off they go. So that's why I like to work with things like I work with the moon. I'm a Cancer. I like to work with the moon. This is my planet, and I love working with the moon. So I work with the moon energies. I work with the plants. I work with the candles. I work with all of it. So yeah, we bring it all together and then off we go. And so that's why candle magic is effective. And that's why I think that magic and magical practices and law of attraction need to work together. We have to have the idea, we have to have the focus,
Mhm.
but even if our focus is a little, like this,
Mhm.
the magic will keep it going. So
Thank you so much. What's the final message you would love to share with everyone watching today, especially those I'm thinking who are stepping into their path as intuitives or maybe energy workers?
well, I get asked the question a lot because we have a situation where with the internet, where we have access to everything, all kinds of knowledge out there. And people often ask, where do I begin? And they think that it's like a path that's like I have to do step A and then step B and then step C. And that is not a spiritual path to me,
Mhm.
in my opinion. That's not how we do it. Yeah, you have to find a starting point, but it's more like a map. It's more like a giant continent that you get to explore. So it doesn't matter if I drop you in Spain or if I drop you in Ukraine or if I drop you in the US or I drop you in Mexico or I drop you in Japan. Anywhere you land on the map, you can start there. And then you're going to go out from there and you're going to explore other areas. So if they start, for example, with mediumship, that's a great place to start. That's an amazing place to start. Start there. And then you'll discover new paths from there and you'll discover new things from there. And that's where you begin. So begin there. People are always asking, where do I begin? Begin where you are. Begin with what your heart is calling you to do. Begin with what is interesting to you. And from that point, you can explore it all. The beautiful thing is that spirituality, there's no end to the map. You're not going to ever learn everything about everything. So there's always more to explore. And so some things you're not going to be interested in, that's okay. Other things you're going to be super passionate about, and follow your passion. That's how to do it.
Thank you so much. And finally, where can people find you and how they can work with you?
Well, I have a little gift to give everyone that's watching right now. If they go to my website, Parlour of Wonders, or they go to spellsquad.com, that'll take them directly to the page. They can sign up to be on my email list. And if they do that, I give them access to a Q&A that I do every Sunday. It's free, absolutely free. I give them a free ebook, 7 Secrets to Supercharge Your Spellwork. Oh, look at that.
Oh, yes. We should all go for it.
I also give away 13 printable pages for your Book of Shadows, which have correspondences and things that will help you in your magical path, and plus a discount for the shop. So go to spellsquad.com or go to Parlour of Wonders and then look for the tab that says join. They're both going to take you to the same place. And then you can connect with me and join me for my free Q&A every Sunday. So.
Thank you so much, Madame Pamita, from the bottom of my heart for being here and sharing your wisdom so generously. Thank you. I really appreciate your presence and your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Marta. Have a beautiful rest of your retreat.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to all of those watching, whether live or on the replay. And remember, have fun with it. Okay, goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye. I'm ending on